Hi everyone, my name is Philip and welcome to my channel. I just got my next MiningCave rig kit, so let's put this together and add it to my existing stack. This is the 8-slot rig kit. I use this whether I use 6 or 8 cards, so they've always got the same size rack so they can stack on top of each other. I'm going to be using an EVGA 2000 watt power supply. These units can take up to 2 power supplies. They go right in here. The kit comes with a spare PCI riser and enough cabling to plug in all 8 units. Also you get like a pack of screws for screwing in the motherboard and the power supply. If you're using 2 power supplies, there's a little adapter to automatically turn on the second power supply. I've ordered some extra stacking cubes. They go on the top here, so you can stack these on top of each other. And it also came with a power on reset switch. And lastly, it also came with a BTC 250 motherboard. This has got a SATA connector in it and another one of those power switches. So you could use one for power, one for reset, I guess. And the BTC 250, it is a purpose-built mining motherboard. It came with the RAM and CPU already fitted. And it's got 12 PCI slots, so you could potentially plug in up to 12 GPU risers, although obviously being an 8-slot rig, we're only going to be using 8 of those slots. I've also bought a little SSD drive to store HiveOS on, and a SATA data cable so I can plug everything in. So I don't lose any of the parts, I always put in all the GPU screws straight away. Note that MiningCave do give you extra screws, so you will have bits that you don't use up. The next step is to get the power supply installed. We want to use the space closest to the motherboard because a lot of the motherboard cords are only just long enough to get to the ATX connector. So let's slip him in and then get him all screwed in place. Now I've lined up the screw holes for this EVGA power supply, but what happens is in this particular case, these connectors are just a little bit too high for this bar. So I've just taken a screwdriver and I've scribed some marks where the power switch is and where the power socket is. And I'm just going to remove this bar and I'm just going to file down in these gaps just a little bit to make this fit in nice and snug. Okay, fast forward in time, I've got everything screwed back in again. So I cut out little grooves with, I actually hex cut quite a few lines down. Then I used a multi-tool just to cut it out, and then I used a file to trim it back all up again. Everything slots in nicely, switch works properly. I can plug in power cord nicely. So, right, power supply is now in. Time to get the ATX motherboard connector installed. So we'll start by plugging it into the power supply. All right, and then that'll have to come around to the other side. All right, that's all in nice and snug. Now time for the CPU power connector. This motherboard only needs one set of the 2 4-pin connectors, so we'll just plug one of those in. And the rest of that will route over that side as well. Use one cable tie to hold those big bulky cables in place. Time to cable in the SATA hard drive. I think I'm going to place that drive over here, and I think I might just attach him with a little blob of hot glue eventually, but today he can just sit loose. So we'll plug this into the first SATA port, and then he can thread there. I'll put him back through that Velcro. Now to plug in the SATA data connector. And that will also loop around, ready to plug into the hard drive. Okay, I'm going to go image the hard drive and then do the final plugging in. The hard drive is imaged, now we just got to finish plugging it in. So I think long term when I'm done, I'll probably just put a little tiny dot of hot glue under that, something that you can easily pull off, but it still works. Alright, so before we go any further, I'm going to test to make sure that this unit will power up. I'm going to fit the stacking cubes to this existing rig. And now I'm going to add the new rig on top of it. All dropping in nicely. All right, all stacked on top. Now to connect up the power and network cable and see if it appears in Hive. Good news, it shows up in Hive OS. I then jumped over to SSH and SSH into the box and ran the disk-expand command to tell Hive to use the whole 256 gig SSD. Now we can put it back on the table and finish cabling everything else up. The mining rig will power on automatically on power on, but we might as well hook up a power switch. So on the little connector you can see in there, it has two blue pins and the power switch goes opposite the two power switch, which is pins 6 and 8. Probably I'm going to put a little glue dob of hot glue there later on, and I'll just glue that little switch there where I can easily just get to them to turn them on and off. Now we have to hook up all the SATA risers. And PCI risers. Now in the SATA pack, in the PCI riser packs, there is a SATA adapter. So generally you want to throw these away. These are only sort of good for maybe 53, 54 watts. But a PCI riser, a GPU can draw up to 75 watts. And so you'll read a lot of videos on YouTube about people who have had fires where these cables, they might be okay for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, but the continuous running them so far over spec eventually makes the connectors often melt and then little fires happen. So unless you particularly know that your card is going to be using less than 54 watts, you should throw away these SATA PCIe 6 power cables. These are as simple as just plugging them into the motherboard and bringing them over and plugging them into the riser. Okay, I'm just going to fit the next 7 of them and then come back. What I've tried doing with this rig, which I haven't done previously, is I've actually used the Pacific PCI numbered slots. So like for instance, that one's labeled PCI 3, that one's labeled PCI 1, and so I've made this PCI slot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know if that'll cause the cards to show up in that order in Hive OS, but it might be useful. And these last 3 cards, I've just cable tied them underneath the bar, and then these ones I've just kept them all in one big chunk and just let them thread into the cards. So that seems to be fairly tidy. Now on to powering the risers. I'm not exactly sure I'm going to run the power cabling for the risers yet, but let's just start plugging them in and then see what looks best. So these EVGA, so this EVGA power supply didn't come with the rig kit. I bought it separately. The EVGA power supplies are really quiet, so if you want to do mining at home, they'll be good for that. The power supply has 4 VGA power connectors here I can use, so I think I'll use these ones for the risers and save all the ones down the bottom here for the powering the cards themselves. Okay, I'll just jump ahead and plug the rest of these in and then we'll see how it comes out. What I've done is I've run all the power connectors along here, along under this bottom rail and back down to the power supply, and then a couple along here, just over here, just all cable tied up on that bottom rail as well. I think that's got it looking fairly neat and tidy. Now we've just got the big power cables for the GPUs which aren't present yet. So I'm going to be using these splitter cables so that I can take an 8-pin and split it into 2 8-pins so that I can power a GPU that's got 2 8-pin connectors. I don't quite have enough of the connectors looking at it, so I'm just going to go through and cable some of these up now. But basically you just plug your 8-pin into it to get 2 more 8-pins out. Okay, I'm just going to jump ahead and do a few of those and then we'll come back. We are finally there. So I've run all the cables to power the PCI, the GPU cards straight up here. So eventually they'll just come straight up and probably split and then go straight into the GPUs, and I'll just use the cable ties like I have done here to hold them in place. I need to get some more splitters to finish being able to put all the plugs in there, But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So this one will be on hold now until I get some GPUs to go in it, and then in the meantime I'll probably just put a couple little dabs of hot glue to hold those two loose bits in place, and it's all done. Thanks for watching. I hope that was useful to you.